All right. Hello, everyone. We are going to go ahead and get started in about 2 minutes. We've got more people joining. So I'm just going to give it about 2 minutes and then we will get rolling. We get some time for folks to hop on. All right, that number is climbing. Welcome, everybody. If you're just joining us, we're just giving it a minute or two for folks to log on. Our attendee number keeps climbing, so I think people are still getting loaded up. See, give it one more minute, a couple seconds before we start here. Thanks everybody for joining. It's going to be a good hour here. All right, it looks like our numbers have leveled off for a little bit, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to our Social and Emotional Learning in Context webinar. We are so happy to have you here today. My name is Sarah. I'm from the brand team at McGraw-Hill. I promise you won't be hearing me for very long. I'm just gonna get us all started, level set what to expect today, cover a couple housekeeping items, and then I'm gonna hand it off to our attendees. So at first, what you guys can expect today if you've joined us. We are going to start with one of our very own thought leaders from McGraw-Hill, who's going to take us through a little bit in terms of trends in social and emotional learning. We're going to go through some data that we have on how COVID has affected SEL and student well-being. Then we're also going to pass it off to a number of thought leaders and speakers. Some really incredible guest educators that we have here today. And that part of the webinar is really going to be a rapid share out. So the goal of that piece of the webinar, after we kind of level set the conversation and get us all up to speed, is to really have you guys take away some ideas that you can bring back to your classroom from these educators and these nonprofit leaders and these thought leaders who have been really making some movement with SEL in their classrooms. So our speakers today include Rashika McNeil from McGraw-Hill, Jenna Moniz from the Heart Mind Institute, Lisa Labidi from Music in the Brain, and we have Tim Needles, who is a very talented guest blogger of ours and an art teacher, STEAM teacher, and an author. So before I pass over to Rashika, I just did want to cover, we have a chat box, which some of you have already found, and a Q&A. Place your questions and your comments and your thoughts in that box as we go. We will have plenty of time at the end for questions, so just dump all your questions for all the speakers. And finally, when you registered for this webinar, you likely noticed that this is the first in a 4-part series. So we're just getting started today. So please, we're so happy to have you today, but come back and join us for whatever suits your schedule every Wednesday in October, same time, same place. Today, we're really digging into social and emotional learning, but in the future, we're going to get more into kindness in the classroom and hear from some really amazing speakers. So with that, thank you all so much. And I'm going to pass to Rashika.
Thank you, Sarah. First of all, welcome everyone, and we're so glad that you're able to join us for our session today, The Future of Social and Emotional Learning, really talking about SEL in context. So when we think about SEL, we're thinking about it today from a new angle, a new light, and then finally to gather some practices to take back into our classrooms. When we approach this conversation, or as we're approaching this conversation with the assumption that most of us are really quite familiar with social and emotional learning at this point, but to level set and to make sure that we're all on the same page here, we like to start with this definition from CASEL, the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. So here's their definition on the slide. Social and emotional learning, SEL, is an integral part of education and human development. SEL is the process through which all young people and adults acquire and apply the knowledge, skills, and attitudes to develop healthy identities, manage emotions, and achieve personal and collective goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain supportive relationships, and make responsible and caring decisions. In essence, all learning is social and emotional learning. We're also thinking about from CASEL, basing today's session on the 5 core competencies of self-awareness, from self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. So as we think about social and emotional learning, where we know where we've been, we know where we are now, but then we're also thinking about where are we going? For many of us, this has been a long journey to understand, to prioritize, and integrate social and emotional learning. So here at McGraw-Hill, we recently conducted a survey of parents, teachers, and educators, and to really get a pulse on the social and emotional learning landscape. These are some of the takeaways or our findings from that survey. Teacher familiarity of social and emotional learning has risen 11 percentage points since the last time we conducted a survey in 2018. So from 83% in 2018 to 94% here in 2021. We also learned that teachers are much more knowledgeable about their school or district's plan for teaching social and emotional skills, up from 77% in 2018, now to 91% in 2021, and that 80% of parents believe social and emotional learning is important in today's world. I don't think any of us are surprised by the increase in percentage points. We also know that the pandemic has greatly influenced the way educators think about and prioritize social and emotional learning. A majority of educators in our survey said that COVID-19 and or the shift to remote or virtual learning has caused their students emotional distress, problems with attendance. Administrators and teachers both cite that students have given up on school and show signs of depression, loneliness, and anxiety. Teachers have also found that student confidence has plummeted, and it's easier for them to disengage from learning. Most educators also believe that social and emotional learning is important to help students transition to being back in the classroom, in buildings, learning, and they need the help with processing family loss during COVID-19. So our educators believe that social and emotional learning will help to provide that short-term benefits, such as reduced behavior problems, improved grades, and less emotional stress. And again, I don't think any of us are surprised by these findings. In addition to that, we are currently working with some districts that have decided to prioritize social and emotional learning support and starting the first couple of years of their academic year with this versus going right into academics. That's how important this is. So what's next for social and emotional learning? Well, that's important. We know where we've been, where we are, where do we need to go? So reflecting on this past year, this is what we've learned. Students need support now more than ever. School, home, family, and community are inextricably linked together. Students' experiences outside of the classroom shape their experiences inside of the classroom. And as educators, our ties to families, parents, and the community are critical. Just as students have academic learning differences, they also have differences in their social and emotional learning needs. There is no one size fits all when it comes to social and emotional learning. For today, we want to expand our thinking around SEL by considering the ways that social cultural elements and other non-academic or academic factors can influence a student's experience with social and emotional learning. SEL has always been about educating the whole child. So now we're considering how that whole child exists, grows, and learns within their whole world. So let's put this into context, and let's put, by considering all of the differences among our students, including our social cultural elements of student learning and experience. And there are a lot of ways to think about SEL in relationship to all the other factors that influence a child's experience. And the idea of the whole child is closely related here. So we're going to dive into that a little bit more and push it even further. So what are those cultural factors, you may ask? In the chat, if you don't mind, I'd like for you to take a moment and to share with us, to share with us some tangibles that are factors that you may think influence a child's experience both inside and outside of the classroom. It can be anything from family dynamics, food security, academic learning, differences in culture. Thank you, Stephanie. Home life definitely is a factor here, absolutely. Poverty, socioeconomic status, absolutely, Becky. Thank you for sharing. Cultural differences, absolutely. Thank you, Shelby. Language background, life events, exposure to abuse, definitely can impact a child's their experience both inside of the classroom and out. While it may seem a little counterintuitive because we're looking at the whole child, these are definitely factors that influence what happens inside of the classroom. And so when we think about this in the big picture, we're thinking about that educational equity and equitable communities, access to resources both in school and at home, the cultural family community. We all have an impact on what happens in our classroom, academic learning as well as learning differences, but most importantly, it's our kids, it's the students themselves. Their interests, their passion, their traits is what makes them human. So we're going to dig a little bit deeper into some of these things this afternoon. So it's my pleasure at this point to share with you the rest of our panelists. We're going to start with Jenna Moniz of the Heart and Mind Institute. We're going to transition now then to Lasala Beatty from the Director of Music in the Brain. And then finally, Tim Needles is who you'll hear from, who's also an art educator and technology integration specialist at Smithtown Schools and author of Steam Power. Jenna?
Thank you so much, Rashika, and thank you, Sarah. And thank you truly to McGraw-Hill for hosting this series. In my opinion, the most important conversation that we can be having right now as it relates to students and young people. To any of you that we are in the wake today of yet another school shooting. So I also thank the crew here for flipping my slides around a little bit because I wanted just to take a moment to address that and dive right into a tool or two that we use with the HeartMath Institute, which has a lot to do with the communication in the heart. So Jenna Moniz from the HeartMath Institute. I'm here today from North Carolina, but recently from Broward County. So it's interesting that some of the data that you pulled up in your survey starts surveying from 2018. And as many of you will remember, 2018 was the year that Broward County endured our huge, the whole world. And yet here we are again with another large community being affected in this way. Slide that just says talk less is the wise advice from a colleague, co-worker, and mentor of mine, Diane Wilk-Rogers. She's a survivor, she's many things, and she's a survivor of the Stoneman Douglas shooting. And after that happened in our community, she invited me in to do a lot of the work that she was currently doing with adolescents and teens as it relates to self-regulation and compassion. So if it's okay, I would just like to take a moment to advance to the next slide and dive right into one of the tools that we use with the HeartMath Institute. And then I'll kind of back out of it to explain what was kind of happening physiologically with us. So with Arlington, Texas in mind, with my folks in Broward in mind, with all of you on the call in mind, I would like to invite you all to focus. So literally your attention on the area of your chest or your heart. And so sometimes we invite our students to also put their hands over their heart just because it helps to put their attention there, their focus there. And anywhere you put your focus or your attention, you're able to make change. So I invite you all to put your attention on the area of your chest or your heart. Breathing in and out of your heart area, slower and deeper than usual. 5 minutes on the exhale, 6 seconds, 4 or 5 seconds on the inhale. Nice, smooth, calm. And then from there, I invite you to pull upon an emotion of ease or compassion or calm, and send that compassion, that calm, that ease to yourself first. And you can kind of generate that out to everyone on this call. And then we'll further extend that to folks in Texas, and if you will, all of the young people in our Math Institute that has been in existence for 30 years or so. Research has been done as to the impact of the communication, if you will. And what the research has led us to is just the deep understanding of the intelligence and the power of the heart. I think in a lot of ways that the mind, the brain of the body, and we know now that the heart is much more intelligent than we've given it credit. For example, the heart forms in a fetus before the brain does. The heart has far more magnetic energy outside of the body. The brain's magnetic energy only extends about 11 inches outside of the head, the brain, while the heart can extend 3 feet and more. And perhaps most importantly, we know that 80 to 90% of the information that goes between the mind and the heart comes from the heart and travels up in an affluent manner, as opposed to down from the brain. We know that a lot of what is being fed to the mind is being fed from the body, and particularly from the heart. It has everything to do with the way that we maneuver, the way that we move through the world, how it affects our physiology. Into a whole bunch of the science, I think a lot of us have learned a lot, and especially in the last few years, about the communication in the mind and the heart. We talk about the autonomic nervous system. We talk about the vagus nerve and that communication between the heart and the mind. We talk about what happens when we're in fight or flight mode. And what we can see happening with young people right now is that they're functioning outside a healthy or optimal window of tolerance. And we see their reaction as either a hyper arousal or a hypo arousal, or sometimes both, sometimes a vacillation bit back and forth. Out, or we can see shutting down. So I've had the opportunity through the HeartMath Institute and with my folks in Broward to create a micro school. And in that micro school, we practiced a lot of the tools and we learned a lot of the science. And we actually just walked the walk of what social emotional learning can look like. And thank goodness we're finally having these conversations mainstream. Next slide, please, Sarah. With our students, we know that by providing lots of opportunities for them to express what they're going through, express what they're thinking, express how they're feeling, not just the heavy stuff and the painful stuff, but the creative end as well, to express their creativity in the ways that they're comfortable and to stretch their interests. When we listen to talk, don't we? When we listen to our young people, hear from them will be profound. And sometimes what we hear from them will let us know that we need to take further steps. So in simple activities like check-ins, daily check-ins, allowing students to share stories about what's going on with them, what's happening with them, to share their music. Because sometimes music is a way that young people can communicate without having too much focus on them. And sometimes a song will illustrate a mood that they're in. So by offering them opportunities to make music, integrate music, share music, to create visual arts, and to move, whether we're calling it multiple intelligence or whatever it is, by allowing them multiple opportunities to express themselves through different modalities. For example, one of the projects that we do with students is on the hero's journey. And so while a literary is to parallel the hero's journey, and we let them know their heroes and who they look up to, who their idols are important to us. We want to know what they think and not just push information at them, but hear from them. So they journey through their books, through their comics, through their movies, and then we make them. So they're able to express to us in different ways and take a look at their own narrative, their own stories, their own lives. And I'm hoping my audio is okay. I'm hoping everyone can hear me well. I see that in the chat.
You're cutting out a little bit on and off. Jenna, just keep close to the computer. I think it's just internet. We'll keep going. You're okay. Yeah.
Thank you. So through the hero's journey, we allow our students to make themselves the protagonists in their own lives. And they take a look at the challenges that they're going through. They share a bit about the challenges that they're going through. And then we give them tools to deal with those challenges and to express themselves. And so we teach them and we learn together that emotions are like superpowers. Our emotions can either work for us or against us. So through tools, including the one that simple tool that we practice together at the beginning, we show students that they too their own lives, the boss of their own feelings, the boss of their own emotions, as opposed to placing their emotions outside of themselves through technology, social media, etc. We allow them opportunities to have conversations about things that are important to them. We talk about social media, and the format that we have our conversations matters too. So many of our students are used to a debate format where there's usually a winner or a loser, right or wrong, and that can bring up emotions of students of angst. So while it's not our intention to make them feel anxious, just by nature of the way we set our conversations up can provoke anxiety from some students. So through seminars and other formats of conversation where there's no winner or loser, we actually synthesize their ideas and come up with new solutions together. We're able to harness not only their intelligences, but sentiments of, they learn perspective and they learn compassion and they come up with new solutions together. So through problem-based, project-based learning as well, which is inherently social emotional learning, students get practice working together and practicing the 21st century skills of critical thinking, but also of perspective and compassion, and learning from one another and not feeling like they have to be right and that they're winning this conversation, but it's more of a synthesis and solutions to get in. Slide, please. And I'll just wrap up with this. one of the projects that we did with our students was to send heart or send positive intentions kind of in the way that we started off with. We did with our students was, a science project. So it was the scientific method. They're learning the scientific method. They're learning photosynthesis through plants. So we had a controlled group of plants and we had an experimental group of plants. And what students did, and we were virtual at the time, was use HeartMath tools to send positive intentions or positive thoughts or heart to the experimental group of plants. As a part of our science project, we wanted to see, well, does it work? Does this stuff work? Does the growth of the plants, are the growth of the plants impacted by our positive intentions, by our emotions? So I invite you all to practice it on your own, send positive emotions to one group of your plants or one plant and not another, and see what happens. What we know at the HeartMath Institute is that energy is real. And the kids will call it vibe. It's a free. And these are fields that live outside of ourselves and they interconnect. And one of the things that we do at HeartMath Institute, which works with athletes and health professionals and even NASA, is to study what happens with the global impact of our emotions, if you will, are. And we know that what we do and how we send ourselves emotions and to everyone else impacts the globe. So through heart rate variability, which is self-regulation and regulating emotions, we know that really our emotions are superpowers and they work either for or against us. And so we've had the opportunity to practice some of those tools and learn some of that science. This is kind of just a quick sharing. We don't have a lot of time to get too much more, deeply into what we did, but I wanted to share a little bit about what we did. And of course, to send heart out to folks in Arlington. It's become an epidemic. It's clear that our young people are in pain. And what we see is that, increasingly young people will turn that lack of tolerance or that not having the resilience or capacity or tolerance for the pain internally and self-harm or externally and hurt their peers. So it, in my opinion, is time for all hands on deck. And so I'm so grateful to be a part of this conversation with you all. Thank you, McGraw-Hill. Thank you for your time. At this point, I think we will turn this over to Lisala. So Lisala.
I'll chime in right before we pass to Lisala. I know we had a little bit of internet dropping in and out. No fault of yours at all, Jenna. Just to all of our attendees, if you want to learn any more, we will have follow-up resources. There will be a blog post. We'll include lots of resources from the HeartMath Institute and from Jenna. So thanks for handling a little bit of technical difficulties, but we'll definitely make sure you guys have resources. Okay, Lisala.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Thank you, Jenna. That was beautiful. That was really powerful. I want to just quickly introduce myself. My name is Lisala Beatty, and I'm the director of Music and the Brain. On behalf of my team at Music and the Brain and our parent organization, the nonprofit Building for the Arts, want to thank McGraw-Hill for this opportunity, and thank you all for being part of this really fascinating discussion. So I just kind of want to start by saying that learning to play an instrument and to read music is really one of the most engaging and sometimes challenging things that anyone can do. But it is so much about your emotions and touches you as well. And I can just speak for myself as a performing vocalist and a composer that for me, I think, music has had everything to do with my emotional well-being and all of my skills. And so I'm really grateful for music in my life. And so I want to speak to you today about Music and the Brain. And my experience through Music and the Brain is that there is an incredible power of school day music education that in particular includes instrument instruction to help to develop and lift every kind of learner. And so I'm excited today to share with you a little bit about some of the inherent social and emotional learning pathways that are possible through music education, but then also some specific things that Music and the Brain has done to try to intentionally implement more SEL in the partner schools that we work with. So next slide, please. I want to just explain a little bit about Music and the Brain. So we are a nonprofit program. We bring a music literacy curriculum that is sequential and multi-year, kindergarten through 8th grade in particular, and whole class piano keyboard instruction, along with ongoing professional development for music teachers. We have an emphasis in our work with under-resourced communities, but we partner with all kinds of schools. And we empower music educators to ensure equity and to also build skills for their schools, their students to succeed academically and in life. So I'm going to actually ask that we move to the next slide. I'd like you to just see some of Music and the Brain in action, and then I'll speak a little bit about it on the other side.
Yeah.
I know the way Joshua went right to work.
The Brain has made it so easy to transition into my first year of teaching and feeling like comfortable and confident while I teach lessons, because you're going to find something that fits your style or technique of teaching.
The kids love it. The songs are age appropriate, so the kids get challenged, but they feel like, a sense of accomplishment because they can play it by the end of the period.
I love Music in the Brain because it makes me happy. My favorite song is Beethoven because it goes, I love to practice because I want to improve my skills and become better at playing the piano.
Well, first when I compose, I think about it in my brain. I have to figure out where the notes take place, and then I play it on piano in secret.
I'm like the most like star of the whole school.
I have trouble playing on the keyboard. I used to turn the machine the real bad. So when I started from, and then just keep on going over and over and over and over until everybody catches up with me.
It feels good, but sometimes it's scary when you're doing it to a whole bunch of people. It makes me feel calm when I'm by myself.
Oh, I just love her smile at the end. If we can go to the next slide, I want to just share a little bit with you about what these lessons are like. And so for Music and the Brain, we're fortunate we've had 25 years of experience working with hundreds of music teachers and hundreds of thousands of students at our partner schools. And what we have found is that a lesson structure of our program that includes students coming to the music room and having really a journey and going through an experience where they're going to explore the repertoire and they're going to learn all kinds of things. So they're going to learn about the composer. They're going to think about what was happening in the world at the time the music was written, and the cultural connections, the languages, and all kinds of things that allow them to start to really analyze what they're playing. And then, of course, the notation as well. You can kind of see on the screen there that most of the lesson is spent away from the keyboards. So the music teacher really is taking these students through this journey, and there's a lot of activities: singing, dancing, moving, rhythmic activities. There's all kinds of opportunities within a, let's say, 45 or 50-minute lesson for these students to experience all kinds of activities that will bring them a sense of self-confidence and self-worth, along with their time playing the keyboard. So it's really a beautiful thing to watch. If we can go to the next slide, I'd love to really kind of break down this SEL component. And again, I'm going to also go with the CASEL competencies here. And they're organized here on the slide according to identity, belonging, and agency. And a lot of the things I'm going to talk about, I think, are interchangeable across these three categories. But, you know, let's just think for a moment. I'm thinking back to the things that the students were saying, and I heard them talking about loving the process, loving repetition, loving to practice, loving to create and compose, persevering through challenges and feeling special, like they were the star of the class, and also feeling calm. So it's a real range of emotions that our students go through. So thinking on identity, self-awareness, and self-management, you know, learning to play and incrementally improving from week to week to week, playing the piano gives our students a great ability to experience perseverance. There's goal setting for them. There's accountability. There's self-assessment involved, as well as peer assessment. And it's just a beautiful process. The lesson itself is structured where there's so many steps for them to get to the keyboard. So there's a lot of self-management involved for them to get to that place where they can actually really apply themselves and play. You're looking also at an image there under identity of a student leading a part of a lesson. And that's something we really encourage for teachers to use our program that way. And music education opens up that possibility. I want to also speak on belonging, social awareness, and relationship skills. So first of all, the repertoire that our students are learning is diverse, so many languages and countries are represented, and there's an ability for them to gain respect and knowledge of different cultures, and also to see themselves reflected in the curriculum. You're seeing all those images of students working together at the keyboard. So obviously the pandemic has changed some things right now, but the typical lesson has students partnering and assessing each other, helping each other as they're learning to play. And, you know, there's just some beautiful social emotional development that comes out of that experience. You're also seeing that virtual piano there. I'm going to speak about that in a moment, but equity is really at the heart of what we do. And in terms of belonging, we're now in a position to give our students an ability to practice at home. So that's building their sense of belonging. Lastly, agency and responsible decision-making. You know, anytime you embark on learning a new skill like the piano and music generally, there's a lot of preparing for performances. And every student has to go through this process of learning to be responsible and to be diligent and to get that opportunity to share what they've developed and what they've learned. So we can move on to the next slide. I want to just share with you, just because of this pandemic and the ongoing effect it's had, for us as a program, what we tried to do to support our partner schools was to give a new tool. And the Music in the Brain All Access platform really has done that for our teachers so that they can teach in the classroom or remotely, and students can access lessons at all times. And so I want to also highlight it's allowed us to develop more in terms of social emotional activities. You're seeing on the screen there, how does this recording make you feel? And every lesson is getting students to think deeply about how they're affected by the music that they're hearing and learning, and how they think about all the music they hear. Also, we've got an opportunity through our platform and our music hero videos, where we have musicians who are performing these pieces and different renditions of it. So there's all kinds of role modeling that is occurring through our lessons that way. So we're really excited about it. I will just say we were recently honored with a mention by Fast Company in the 2021 Innovation and Design Awards for this platform. So we're thrilled about the fact that students are really starting to use it and it's making a difference. So as I move forward and close here, the next slide, please, I just want to share with you, we have had ongoing assessment by Columbia University Center for Arts and Education Research by Dr. Rob Horowitz particularly looking at our program and the way that it's impacting social emotional learning and skill building for students. So you can see on the screen there the kinds of difference that having this kind of learning is making. And he spent a lot of time looking through our materials and our training and talking to music teachers and them sharing, many, many, many anecdotes about how they've seen students develop through music. The music teacher is a powerful person in the school. And I don't know how many of you on this call today may teach music, but if you don't, it's really important for you to be aware of the power of this kind of instruction and how it can impact your students. It should be part of the social emotional learning mission of your school to make sure that students have this kind of learning. And you can also see there that it's impacted standardized tests scores as well in ELA and in math as we look at some of our students in New York City. So I want to just close on the next slide and just share with everyone an opportunity. If you have your cell phone and you might be interested in a program like ours, or just to talk about ways that music can be infused in what you do in your school, please feel free to contact us there and reach out to us and submit a partner school application. We'd love to talk to you about your school, what kind of music program you have, if you're in need of that. And we hope to continue the conversation. So thank you all so very much. I think right now it's time for us to hear from Tim.
Thank you and welcome. That was terrific. And I'm an art teacher. I've been in the classroom for 24 years and I'm an artist myself. So I totally relate. I think the arts are naturally full of some of these social emotional learning tools. And they're just, they're kind of something that gives back to your soul. So, I mean, that's the magic of the arts. So I'm going to share a little bit about how I've used social emotional learning in the classroom in a bunch of different ways. And if you want to reach out, you can see my social media handles are there, and I'd love to connect. So on this first slide, I'd like to share a very important lesson that I think I learned in teaching, and so many other teachers kind of will learn early. So next slide, please. So that's to be mindful of the impact you have as an educator. So I think we all remember back to our own school experience and the teachers that really made an impact on us. And sometimes the teachers that we felt maybe didn't understand us or didn't connect with. And it's those connections that you make with students that are really, really powerful. That's what allows the learning to occur. Once students know that you care about them, that's when real learning can start. And that relationship is the most important thing we do as a teacher. I know that, our main duty is to share knowledge, but I think that knowledge, is actually secondary to the relationships we have. So, that caring is really important. And, you might be having a bad Tuesday because everyone has that happen, but you don't ever want to pass that on to students, right? You don't want to have someone think back to their experience with you and it be a negative one. And also in that same way, I think modeling is really important. So, you don't realize the stories that you tell students have a big impact. Sometimes it's important to share your own social emotional learning practices and your mindfulness routine, things that really work for you, and your struggles. I think that's realistic too, because, it is a challenge sometimes. So next slide, please. So I think that the creative mindset is really an important aspect of social emotional learning. So I like to remind students and the community that every day is another opportunity to be creative. And, that creative process really brings us, in the present and centers us, and that's really helpful. And learning to adapt and improvise is really crucial. I mean, never as much as now in the pandemic have we had to adapt and sort of understand how to connect with people in different ways. And I think, the growth mindset is really important here. So, it helps to really reframe the difficulties and see them as challenges rather than limitations, and really, share them as opportunities. So, it's really important to sort of be open and focus on the positives, especially in a time like this that like it's so easy to be negative with all of the things going on in the world. I think, you know, finding a way to keep positivity in your heart is really essential. Next slide, please. So, you know, as an artist and as a teacher, I always, you know, encourage everyone to just express themselves. Find something that works for you, whether it's fine art or music or theater or dance. And you don't need to be good as an artist to enjoy it and get something out of it. You know what I mean? Like, I might not have the best voice, but I love karaoke. You know, that feels fantastic. I mean, you know, you feel great after doing it. You know, and I might be a bad dancer, but, you know, it really helps expressing yourself. So whatever works, you know, give yourself some time to do that, both as an educator and to share that idea with the students and model that out. You know, so I always encourage my students to do that. We all need to vent. We need to let things out. You don't know what students are going through. And oftentimes, you know, this whole act of expressing yourself helps you connect with others. So you might relate to something that, you know, one of the students says, and that might help build a bond. So, you know, in doing this, like during the pandemic especially, it's been more stressful as a teacher than ever. So I literally schedule time for myself to actually just be creative. And you know, whether that's just a walk through nature, I think exercise is a great way too, or, you know, making art or singing or creating. Next slide, please. So one of the things that I found really effective is just gratitude. I think gratitude is something that really helps all of us, you know, focus on positive and what we care about. So I like to have visual reminders of gratitude. You know, I started in my classroom and, you know, we took some of the words that are important to us and that we wanted to focus on, and we literally painted murals on the wall. So, you know, this had a couple beneficial effects. One is that it really, you know, brightened up the classroom, and it was a more creative space that we wanted to spend time in. And then, you know, it also really helped maintain that focus over a period of time. So using your classroom or whatever your learning space is a great way. But we also created, you know, each student created little cards with artwork that kind of remind them of something they want to focus on. So we use that one word idea because, you know, a full sentence is a little bit too much to keep mindful of for the entire year. So, you know, students shared things that they wanted to focus on and what they were grateful for. So I think that's really important. And then, you know, it started in my classroom, and then I realized that this was powerful, and we rolled it out to the whole school. And then I just started sharing it on social media, and other schools started doing it. Next slide. So the other part of this is that we realized that, you know, this was so effective that we wanted to share it out. So we wanted to share our gratitude, and, you know, we made small pieces of art to give to the people that we were grateful for. And this was terrific because, you know, it's a good way to connect with the people that you love and that are meaningful to you. Like I said, it's those relationships in life that really matter. So, you know, creating these visual reminders helps us, but, you know, giving them away really makes this beneficial impact on the whole community. And this is something that could really help change your whole school culture and, you know, create an enormous amount of positivity. You know, some people that, you know, received these cards hung them up, and I still see them, you know, years later, and it makes a really big impact. Next slide. So in that process of sort of sharing out what works, you know, I found that in the pandemic, it was really difficult, you know, kind of managing over the virtual learning platform. So, you know, I had students share, and I made a big focus on social emotional learning because, especially, you know, early on in the pandemic in New York, it was really difficult and students were upset. And, you know, we understand as educators that if you're worried about something, if your mind is somewhere else, if you're worried about, you know, the food that you might not have and you're hungry, or you're worried about your family or friends, you know, you're really not going to be able to focus on learning. So we made a practice. Our check-ins were often visual. That really helped. You know, there's a lot of ways to check in with students, and, you know, I used a variety of different techniques just to keep it fresh and to make sure that everyone was able to share and be comfortable with it. So ultimately, this was one of the most effective things, is that I had students share out what helped them be mindful. So things that helped them relax and find some calm. And then we used a free program called Adobe Spark to actually make them into short visuals that we shared out with the school and put out on social media. So, you know, so many of these things are things that begin in the classroom and then we end up sharing out and they make a larger impact. And as an educator, you don't want to really have your learning end in the classroom. You want to bring the community into it. And, you know, we've pushed it forward this year, and we're partnering with the community to actually take some of these ideas and make them into murals in the town. Because we all need some mindfulness right now. I think it's really important. Next slide. So, you know, this is my mantra to my students and to myself. I think, you know, one of the things that really holds up people in terms of mindfulness is, you know, the feeling of judgment one way or another, or, you know, not feeling good about yourself. So like those feelings will really get in the way occasionally. So, you know, letting go of that idea of perfect and just focusing on progress is essential. And like, you know, in learning, you know, failure is just naturally part of the process. So we need to forget about the stigma that's attached to the word failure and realize that if we persevere, there is no failure. You know, that's just called learning. So changing the whole mindset there is really, really important. And it's something that, you know, I don't mention once or twice that you have to go back to it and remind people, but also, you know, sharing your challenges that you have and things you learn from, and then, you know, creating a safe space where students feel comfortable sharing some of the challenges that they face now and they've faced in the past is really important. And, you know, there's no more important time for social emotional learning than now. The pandemic is really difficult for so many people. And, you know, we've had so many struggles, and in a real way, we are going through really a sea change in education, and technology has become such a big part of teaching these days. And, you know, it's important to actually share some tools for people using so much technology to make sure that they shut off their devices and get away and, you know, get outside and just breathe some fresh air sometimes. So thank you so much. And I'll pass it back to Sarah.
Thank you all. That was wonderful. I have been monitoring the chat. If anybody has any questions, we've got a couple of minutes left. So please drop them there, or you can use the Q&A, whatever you prefer. Otherwise, while you're thinking about that, Krista, if you don't mind dropping those 2 links for me, there's 2 places I wanted to send you guys. So first of all, please feel free to come back every Wednesday this month, same time, same place. I think today we learned so much about putting those social and emotional learning practices in context of our students' lived experiences, right? And with emerging science from Jenna, and with art and with music, I think we really got into it today. And in the future Wednesdays of October, we are going to be digging into some other programs that we can adopt to bring to schools to focus on kindness in the classroom, also to think about remote learning and connecting with families. So we'll be going that route for the next 2 sessions. So thank you all so much. And I don't see any questions, just a lot of good thank yous. All right, and be sure to visit us on our blog. We'll have some follow-ups, some recordings, things like that. And hopefully we will see everyone next Wednesday, same time, same place.
Fantastic session. Thank you, Sarah. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, everyone.